The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel is your digesting signing day part 2. The book is closed on 2024 and some final gets for the Big Red. We'll highlight some of those fellas and hear from Matt Rhule here this first segment. His presser got done about 30 minutes ago or so. Can dial us up and join us today on Hail Varsity at 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. Can watch the show, stream it on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Give that handle a follow at HVarsity Radio. Can find Elijah at Herbal Essence and at Schmidt_radio for me. Can also follow us and find us along Facebook and different Twitter outlets and across the Hail Varsity Radio network. So we'll hear from Mike Babcock, get his take on some of the thoughts and things Rhule touched on in about 15 minutes or so. Connor Clark will join us from Evanston as he is on the call tonight with the student radio station KRNU, the Mighty 90.3, as Connor will be intimidating those around him with his deep and Marlboro red voice. So Connor will be on site for Nebraska Northwestern. Monster game tonight for both those programs. Part of the signing class is Camden Cook, of course, son of Baltimore Ravens punter and now special teams consultant with the Ravens. It is Super Bowl week, and Sam's got some bling with the Ravens. About 10 years ago, an incredible 16-plus year career with the Ravens. So we'll spend time with Sam Koch in hour 2. Evan Bland checks in with us at 525, his take on signing day. So plenty of football, plenty of hoops, and we'll tackle it all. Let's get the shout-outs going as we do our starting five, our first five in the stream. You want to hear your name or be a part of it, jump on, subscribe to Hail Varsity YouTube, and be a part of our show each and every day that way. Also with the weekend edition that tends to fluctuate, but we try to be up and rolling at 7:45 every Saturday morning for you. So Anonymous checks in first. I should actually sign in once, so being first would mean something. Appreciate you, Anonymous. Brandon in at second. The artist formerly known as KG Kids for Life checks in third. Matthew in at 4. Jeff, tip your cap, you're 5. Andrew in at 6. Patrick, 7. And Eric in at 8. We'll just round out our first and second team. Not that I'm placing any of you, but you have it too deep is what I'm getting at for 10, starting 5. Brennan from Black Hills is in along with Eric and Tuck. Roger just misses, but Roger, thank you. Dion checks in as well. So that's kind of a Micro Machines opening segment. Forgive my speed, but time is of the essence, Elijah, because you've got some guys to highlight, man. A big-time finish for Nebraska on this cycle where you have Keona White that made his announcement at 2:30. Because of that timeline, the presser got moved from 11 to 3 o'clock today. But
which made things fun for us over the past hour or
which
so.
Is fine, dude. We just got busy with the old edit machine. Keona's in. That is nice. Amari Saunders is pretty big time as well.
Former Wisconsin kid.
Right, and that is good for Nebraska. And, you know, another name to look at here for the Big Red is somebody that they've touched on, and there's so much to go through here. I look at Nebraska, and they really do a good job homework-wise of fit, right? They go in, they look at the kids' competitive nature. That's super important. But they go and kind of circle and target needs, which is absolutely important here. We'll get to some comments here on Glenn Thomas, some clarification here on Sat and his role. Really, it's the same as it's always been, but Rhule touches on a lot of things.
And one quick note, correction on myself. Said Amari Sanders, former Wisconsin kid. Incorrect. I had that wrong. It's Kamir Prescott.
Prescott.
Was formerly committed to Wisconsin.
Right.
He's a safety. That's a kid I really like. A big pickup on for Nebraska on National Signing Day. It's his name along with Will Height that are the two that really stand out to me as being potential impact guys.
No, Prescott's a dude they really, really liked. And without further ado, let's hear from Matt Rhule. He was asked about Keona Will Height out of the gate. And here's his take on Will Height and why you make room for a guy like Will Height.
You know, he's a unique situation in that he was going to Washington. You know, obviously college football's been turned on its head since Coach Saban left and all the after effects. And so was back on the market. Great job by Terrence Knighton. Great job by Tony White. Terrence had a relationship with Keona and his family. They were interested. They came to visit, had a great visit. Even Thursday night, I thought he wasn't coming. You know, I thought he was going to go somewhere else. But Tony and Terrence really did a great job down the stretch. And he's exactly the type of person we're looking for. You know, on the football field, he's big, strong, athletic, physical. He's going to be a huge man with great athleticism. Off the field, great family, great character. He's going to be a great fit for our guys. So it was great to get him today. That's why we moved the press conference till to now, because he was going to announce at 2:30. So I hate messing with your guys' schedules, but that's why. So
it's all about us, Coach. You move that thing to Sunday at noon if you want, if you're getting a 6'5" dude off the edge. So the guy we also circled here, Kamir Prescott, Rhule asked about Prescott and his addition.
Give me 2 seconds. Okay.
Kamir's someone we targeted early. You know, we visited him, early on. Tremendous person, first of all. Loves the game, tough, physical, can run. We think he'll be a ball hawk. Was headed to another school. And for one reason or another, that didn't work out. And he was on the market. Coop stayed in touch with him. And I think he has a lot of confidence and trust in us as people that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And I think we added a really good player in that one.
More from Rhule here on and listen, as a Nebraska fan, depending on your age, what do you know about the Black Shirts? What do you know about Nebraska football? From the time I kind of grew up watching this team, it was the Sandman. It was Broderick Thomas. It was Mike Kroll. It was Neil Smith. It was Danny Noonan. It was Wistrom, who we were just lucky enough to talk with yesterday. It was Steve Warren. It was Bad Mother Rucker. It was the Peter Boys. It was somebody getting their head crushed on 3rd down and 8 with 4 men or maybe a zone blitz. They were dead. If you were a quarterback and it was 3rd and 8, you were a dead man, because Nebraska could get after the quarterback coupled with really good man coverage, the Tyrone Williams and Baron Miles of the world. You fast forward to the Jay Moore era, Moore and Carricker off the edge, killing people. They led the nation in sacks. That's what Nebraska's got to get back to. And they had some really nice young infusion of guys getting after the quarterback. You saw some pop plays. And they have a collection of guys that are problems. And you have to go back to Kaz's defensive line in 2013 and 2014 to the last time you had dudes like a Vincent and Randy Gregory, of course, and Malik. I mean, those dudes not only stopped the run, but they were great. They were 3rd down assassins. And I love Nebraska's attitude about not just kind of standing pat with the pass rushers they've got. They're going to keep getting the guys that came in and kind of wowed as freshmen to get them to a different level as sophomores. But Rhule talks about here, cut 3, they're not going to say no to pass rushers. The whole premise of competition is key. You keep adding talent, but more pass rushers, the better. And fresh pass rushers is a real big thing.
I think that I don't pay a lot of attention to, a lot of coaches look at like, hey, we need 4 of these, we need 3 of these. I've never thought that way. I always look for people I think can make a difference, and I always look for big people. I'm always looking for O linemen and D linemen, and I don't care how many we have. If we have too many, then it'll sort itself out. So, Keona, I just think when you're that big and that athletic, it's it's a no-brainer. Jordan, Marcus and Keith Williams. Keith has done a great job for us in personnel. They had been talking with Jordan. I went out recruiting with Sat. He had me up at 5 o'clock going out to see a workout. Had a chance to meet Jordan, talk to him, and this is a guy that had Pac-12 offers. He had Mountain West offers. He has a love for Nebraska and wants to come here and play at this level. And so, unbelievable opportunity. But to your point, I think we have a lot of great pass rushers coming back. But we're always, if you can rush the passer or you can take the ball away, we're always going to take a shot on you. So I'm always looking for guys in those positions.
Amen. And you know what? Nebraska is trying to be a upper echelon, get after the quarterback. Michigan was fabulous. Ohio State has put a lot of guys into the league. And you look at the San Francisco 49ers.
And the Chiefs.
Well, the Chiefs, but I was going with the depth that San Francisco has, the collection of all-stars off the edge that they are going to try and be problems with on Sunday.
I think it's a great example just to look at the Super Bowl and see both of these teams have pass rushers. Look at Chris Jones, what he's done for the Chiefs this year. Interior Karlaftis has been pretty good for the Chiefs this year as well. The 49ers, they use their pass rush to help them get to the Super Bowl. It's one of those things that you just have to have in football with the direction football's moving. Everyone wanting to throw the ball around, air it out. I know it's a little less so in the Big Ten, but it's still there. The great trump card that you have, as we kind of talked about with Grant Wistrom yesterday, is getting after the quarterback and making him uncomfortable. If you leave your cornerbacks on islands all game long, eventually a team with a heartbeat of a passing attack is going to beat you. They're going to beat you deep. That is, unless you can get after their quarterback, make him uncomfortable, and instead of his first place, his eyes goes being downfield, reading the defense and understanding where he's going to go with the ball. It's looking at that front four, front five, front six, the guys coming after him. That's the great equalizer on defense in order to slow down passing attacks, because whenever you have these high-flying passing attacks, eventually they're going to get theirs. You saw it with Maryland in that game last year with Talia at the last drive, finally getting some space, being able to air it out downfield. And what does Maryland do? They go kick a game-winning field goal. Well, Nebraska's great trump card, the equalizer to that, would be getting after the passer, getting him to the ground, and not giving him time back there to go pick apart your defense.
Big time. First and foremost, stop the run. Let's talk Glenn Thomas. Here's Coach Rhule on the Glenn Thomas edition.
Well, I worked with Glenn. Glenn was a difference maker for me at Temple. Sat was the OC. Really wanted to get away from Sat coaching the quarterbacks and being the OC, and because we're not an air raid offense, right? So intimate knowledge and experience in the run game and the play action game is really important for us, and so we hired Glenn there. And P.J. Walker took off under his tutelage, and then he called it for me the last year. And then we went to Baylor and did a great job with the freshman and Charlie Brewer, and then had a chance to go call himself, and he did that. I just trust him. You know what I mean? I know that the quarterback's going to be well coached. I know I don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about those things. His assessment so far, we'll start the cut-up process and all of that thus far. This was in the works for many weeks before it happened. I just was obviously going to be respectful of the Steelers and Coach Tomlin, who I look up to. So we were, I had talked to him, and he had watched us, and I asked him for some of his opinions on, some of our guys, some of the portal guys. Hey, what do you think of this guy? The high school players. So in terms of a global, deal, I think we all know we have to play better in a lot of areas on offense. The specific reasons for why, probably over the next couple of weeks as we get into it and we really sit down and watch it as a staff, we'll have much better answers in terms of, hey, what can we do better here? What can we do better there? As of right now, it's been all kind of anecdotal. Hey, I see you guys changed the split on this. Hey, why are we doing this now? So, but he's an excellent coach. Great family. His two sons are excellent golfers. They're bring a lot to the country club circuit here in Nebraska, so watch out. And but most importantly, I know the quarterback's going to be really well coached.
I need a dedicated guy to that spot. Do we have time for Sat, the declaration of him as play caller? Absolutely, we don't. How about scholarship quarterbacks? We'll squeeze that in. Do you have enough scholarship quarterbacks on the roster?
I've always had 3. I've never really had 4 very many times. I'd love to have 4. Let me just start there. But I also understand this. If last spring we had 6 and we had 4 healthy, it's really hard to get the guys the reps that they need. So here's what I know. Heinrich needs reps to be the starting quarterback and win for us. Danny Kalen needs reps to be the starting quarterback and win for us. Dylan needs reps to be the starting quarterback and win for us. And they all deserve the right to go through that process. So this spring, I think having 3 scholarship quarterbacks is ideal in that those guys can get a ton of reps, right? They're not getting 3 reps in a rack and giving it to somebody else. They need reps and they need to practice. Going into the season, I would love to have a 4th person, but that's kind of the state of college football now, right? Full disclosure, we understand that if someone gets hurt or something happens, I'm sure there'll be guys in the portal in May. If we have a scholarship spot, we can always do that. But we're kind of going all in on these guys. And along the way, a lot of people ask me, why didn't you get a 1-year player? And maybe it'll happen for somebody else. I just don't know how we can win a championship starting a 1-year player every year. So if it's Heinrich, then great. He's got a couple years left. If it's one of these young guys, I'd rather them go out there if they're ready to play. And as a team matures, they mature, and eventually we have a championship caliber team. But bringing a guy in for 1 year for me is not ideal. We'll do it when we have to do it, but it's just not ideal. So we have 2 young players. We have another guy that's in Heinrich that's won at a high level. I'm anxious to watch them battle it out in the spring.
Good stuff. That is sound logic. We'll get Mike Babcock's take here in a little bit.
And I love what he said. Going for a national championship.
Yeah, championships aren't going to be the one and done type approach at quarterback. Let's develop. Let's get better. Babbers on the way with some more football.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging. It's signing day Wednesday 2.0 for 2024, and we welcome in Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock with Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. And get your emails to Babbers. Get signed up for his bi-weekly newsletter. It's MikeB@HurrdatSports.com is where you can send that email to. And Babbers, you know what? We were doing this a long time. And it used to be rain or snow. It was this first Wednesday in February for signing day, and from the Max Preps era to the Blue Chip Report to the Tommy Frazier camera crew incident. What I mean incident, that's Bill Dolman walking with a camera that may or may not have had a VHS in it, and being there for it. It's Barry Switzer having a player stay in a roadside motel that was blocked off the entrance by 2 big old Cadillacs, Switzer once told me. We fast forward to now with Portal, with early signing day, and now we have, let's go get a guy named Kyoto Wilhite to round out a class.
Yeah, it's so clear-cut these days. I mean, you know what's going to happen, and he was important enough that they moved the news conference from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m.
There's a lot that's happened in this world of recruiting. That may be a first where you move a presser. Yeah,
that was good. That says a little bit about how good it was to get the commitment from him. And one of the things. So you have the early signing period, and a significant percentage of those guys, a meaningful percentage of those guys are already on campus, right? We'll be able to go through spring practice. I think that's another positive through this whole recruiting thing. But it's there are a lot of things to balance here, and I think that. Coach Rhule and his staff have done a pretty good job of balancing those things, because you see recruiting classes rated, and Nebraska seems to be consistently at least in the top 25. And that's a good place to start. But as I always say, let's wait till they get on the field and let's see what happens then. This is a great time to be optimistic about things, but let's wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and to your point, Mike, about waiting, seeing what these guys are on the field, do you get the feel, because I don't, that Matt Rhule gives a damn about recruiting rankings?
I would doubt that he does.
He said as much. No. Teammates don't care either.
No, I don't think that. I don't think it's important, but I think from a fan standpoint, just the energy, and again, it's like a season unto itself. It was the old Texas SID. I've probably mentioned this before, but he always used to say there's 2 seasons, football and spring football. Now there's 3 seasons, football, spring football, and recruiting. And if you can be successful from a perception standpoint in recruiting, then that has a reason for optimism going into the spring. After the spring, you have optimism going into the fall. And then when you get to the fall, that's when we find out how the recruiting and the spring fit into this picture.
Mike Babcock's with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports at MD Babs on Twitter, recapping Rhule and his time with the media today and Nebraska rounding out their 2024 class. A lot of interesting things. Nebraska, a great kind of jump start for 2025 as they were on the road in January. The Coach Ed Foley Motivational Speaker Tour, which was nice for Nebraska around the state of Nebraska. Rhule loved his walk-ons that he got from this class, says 3 or 4 guys could be starters. They're not ruling out if things don't shake out how they like at quarterback, looking in May for that answer at quarterback. But I want to get your take here, Babbers, on just overall the urgency. I think we all kind of heard from Rhule. And he was matter of fact about 5 and 7, not good enough, yet still talking about that goal for a championship.
Well, because of the stretch here that Nebraska's gone through, lack of success, lack of getting to a bowl game, I think the fans feel a sense of urgency, and it carries over to the coach. Obviously, he was brought in with that in mind. Hey, let's get something done here, and people thought, well, the first year they're at least going to be bowl eligible. And they certainly had an opportunity to be a bowl eligible if things would go right in those 4 one-score games and an overtime game, which you mentioned today. But I think that I think you have to have some patience. If you've got you have young guys at quarterback, right? And that's where it's going to start. Harburg has some experience. But Kalen and Raiola are incoming freshmen. And that's where it starts, I think, if you're going to get this running game that he talked about, how important that running game was. If you're going to get that going, I think it has to still start with the quarterback and what that quarterback is able to do. And so I think you have to have patience, but it's easy for me to say that. It's not so easy for fans to have that kind of patience when the perception is based on another time and place. 3 national championships in his final 4 years for Tom Osborne. That's a long time ago now. But yet we're looking at things through that glass, I think.
Mike, as we talk about the quarterbacks here, did Matt Rhule's comments on only having 3 scholarship quarterbacks alleviate your concerns with that position about how he felt it was necessary to go all in on those 3 in order to build championship-type teams down the road?
I think it's good that they have only 3 quarterbacks because of the inexperience with those 3 quarterbacks and your opportunity, as he said, to give them time in the spring, equal time in the spring to develop. I think that's important. And then he said, going into the fall, you'd like to have a 4th one maybe. But it's so difficult now, I think, to maintain quarterbacks because of the transfer portal. So if you've got 3 that you feel good about, at least going into the spring competing, I think that's a positive because, again, transfer portal, what happens in the spring? What if they all really do well? And it's still a competition. You look at it and say, well, we still have to compete in the fall because we really haven't gotten a clear-cut guy during the spring. Then do you lose one of those other 3 rather than get that 4th one in there? But I also like what he said about bringing in every year a 1-year transfer portal guy to play quarterback. I don't think that's going to work if you want to have consistent success in your program.
He is good at laying out the fact that there's just always going to be constant competition, first and foremost. don't take it personally. The job is to go get great players. The job is for that environment to make you be your best first and foremost. And, the payoff is what he talked about too. You put all this work in, 3 years of toil, and, it's year 4 for you. And he's also cognizant about, I don't want to ace you out as something you've worked towards, but it's not charity either. You got to go win a job and handle your business to be on the field. So he covers all his bases, and it sounds like he's laid it all out there. And the topic of conversation being competition is going to be key, and that's what has driven Nebraska's best teams. Let's go to basketball. Babber's got about 3 minutes here or so. A just monster game. I don't know how else to describe it tonight. You have two teams that can fluctuate between a 9 and 11 seed right now as we make the corner turn to mid-February with Northwestern. They're on a skid. Nebraska's trying to eke out a 2-2 stretch in this meat of the schedule 4-game run. And there's also some buzz, maybe a lineup change for Nebraska here. We'll see what old Muehlheisen has to say in the pregame. But your thoughts on Nebraska Northwestern tonight? Yes, it's giant, but do you feel okay about Nebraska coming off of what we saw the other night?
It is a significant game. Obviously, on the road, Northwestern has played well at home on the road, and that's your road test. I think is going to be magnified by that. The bigger concern for me is to get that thorn of Rutgers out of your foot, and I think they have an opportunity to do that, because then you've got 2 games at home. So if you can get some momentum here, and you go into 2 games at home against teams that have not exactly excelled, I think you can be in a little bit better position. But I feel good about coming off the Rutgers loss. I feel good about how they played against Illinois.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
And whenever you look at that Illinois game, Mike, do you worry about that giving this team false hope on the road, if you will, with all the struggles that they've undergone, that they kind of think, you know what, if it wasn't for the refs, we would have had them. We figured something out on the road. Is that a concern to you or not?
No, not really, because I think that, just playing well enough on the road to have won and to be able to say that, if we would have gotten one of these calls, we could have won that game. I think that we weren't there on the road earlier in this season. I think now they are, and I think that it was a positive. It was only a positive. There's no negative, I think, except for the fact that, hey, if we got a call that we should have gotten, we could have won that game. That's the one negative there.
It was, we have exhausted ourselves on the Zebras. Maybe Jawan's back in the starting lineup tonight. That could be big for the Big Red. I don't know if you look at Jamarcus Lawrence, if he is somebody that you're not finishing the game with. Do you go somewhere else from a starting standpoint? Does Boo Buie get his revenge and go off after a brutal night at PBA? And can Kisei bring back that Land of Lincoln magic with how well he played? Babbers, this was fun to chat. Thanks for squeezing us in and making time. It's been busy, and always appreciate your insight, good sir.
Thanks, guys. It's always tough following Jimi Hendrix. Appreciate it.
Love it. Yeah, we shouldn't probably be playing Purple Haze. Nebraska Northwestern. Connor Clark from Wildcat Country next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
More thoughts on signing day, more from Matt Rhule coming up. We'll hear from Sam Koch. It's pride of York, Nebraska, longtime Baltimore Ravens punter, part of their coaching staff. His son Camden, part of this signing class for Nebraska 2024. So we'll talk Super Bowl with Sam Koch here in 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. It's Connor Clark live from Well, do we say Evanston, or are you en route to Evanston, Connor?
Currently on the way there, still in Lake Forest, but on Route 41. So we're about 20 or so minutes away.
So that is code for I am not jacking with awful, brutal interstate Chicago traffic to and from the city.
Not quite, but I'm worried I'm going to run into some, so that's why I'm leaving now to get ahead of the 8-ball, but we'll see.
All I know is
tip-off's in like 3.5 hours. This man's committed.
Yeah, last time I went to Chicago, It was the South Skyway that's been like under construction apparently. Use that thing. Avoid that, Connor. You'd know better than I, being from there. But they scammed me. It was like a 15-minute drive, and it cost me like $20. It was an unreal toll. They had like 4 toll booths within 2 miles. It was just a complete joke. So avoid that.
Stay downtown and walk.
Well, good news, I'm not going to Indiana. That would be the only time I'd have to use that. So we're going to avoid the tolls as much as possible.
I still have a toll sitting on my kitchen table at home that I have yet to pay.
So to review, Connor's been to the Pier. He's been to Nike Town. He's hooked up with Jordan and Oprah, and now he's off to call the Nebraska and Northwestern game. If you see Elaine from Seinfeld, we do need a one-on-one from you and her. At halftime in the name of Hail Varsity Radio. You're calling the game for KRNU. Without further ado, get into it. Both teams are mirror images. Both teams are trying to turn the corner in February. What's the difference tonight?
You know, this is a huge game for both of these teams. Both teams coming into this game with back-to-back overtime games. Nebraska's won one of them. Northwestern has not. So that's a really interesting note coming into tonight. Obviously, Nebraska got the best of Northwestern a couple of weeks ago at this point at PBA. But this is a team in Northwestern that, almost beat Purdue on the road. They struggled at Minnesota, maybe a little bit of a hangover from that tough loss at Purdue. I don't know. But this is a team that's hungry, and they know that they need to get a win, especially at Welsh Ryan. They have not lost in league play at Welsh Ryan Arena, just like Nebraska hasn't lost at the Vault this year in Big Ten play. As for Nebraska, another big game. You didn't have Jawad Gary the first time around against the Cats. You do now. How will that affect the rebounding margin? Northwestern isn't a very good rebounding team, so adding Jawad Gary to the lineup here tonight is going to make a big difference, I think, for this Nebraska team. You pair that with the way Rink Mass has been shooting the basketball. He's shooting 48% from 3 in his last 4 games. He's been outstanding from out there. And then obviously the heater that Tominaga went on at Illinois. If he can continue that, Nebraska has a good chance of winning this game. I think it's going to go back and forth all night, guys. And again, just a massive game for both of these teams who are currently in the field of 68.
Connor, with Northwestern, you look at their offense, and Boo Buie's been fantastic this year. Nebraska did a good job shutting him down at PBA, or at least slowing him down. What's your take tonight? Do you think Nebraska has a game plan that's replicable, or do you think that Husker fans should expect a return to normalcy from Boo Buie and his greatness?
Yeah, I think Boo Buie will get back to what he normally does, especially at home. Nebraska did a really good job on him on the defensive end at PBA. He did still have 7 assists, but that's just kind of what he does. He only had 9 points. Brooke Barnheiser kind of stole the show that first time around. But I think Boo will get his, and you're just going to have to live with it. Fred Hoiberg said something similar in his press conference a couple of days ago about Northwestern, and you can't let his tough shot-making ability, which he's really good at in the lane especially, deflate you. And he's going to get his, so be it. You got to win in other areas. Maybe try and shut Brooks Barnheiser down this time around. You can't let Ty Berry get hot. He's one of the better three-point shooters in the league. But I expect Boo Buie to be Boo Buie, that first-team All-Big Ten guard and arguably an All-American.
Connor Clark with us as he is en route to call the game tonight, Nebraska at Northwestern. Connor, where can folks stream you or hear you? What's the website of the app?
Yeah, it'll be on the Nebraska News Service app. Just search 90.3 KRNU, and it will be on KRNU2. If you go to the regular one, you're just going to hear music. So KRNU2 is where you can find us tonight.
So either way, I can put in a request for what's one of the bands? Japan Cakes, circa 2001. Is there still CDs or no? in the KRNU studio.
At KRNU?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
No. Yes, I was
The
there 5
thought
years
bubble
ago.
right now is
bubble.
Schmidt is old. Connor and Elijah both going, CDs? What are you talking about? No, but long and short, it's awesome. We're all proud broadcasting majors / graduates, and it's cool you're on the road for this. -6.5. Let's go to the gambling side of things. You may or may not.
Stopping at Wrigley first.
You may or may not. You may or may not want to jump in on this because typically guys doing the game, i.e. Herb Street, don't predict. But let's just substitute Nebraska Northwestern 6.5 on the road in the Big Ten. Do you run with that or not for a winless team on the road?
It's tough to say because Nebraska was a 10.5-point underdog at Illinois, and you saw what happened there. So I say Nebraska covers that spread. I'm not going to go ahead and say they outright win the game because I think it's just too hard to tell right now. I really think this is going to be a phenomenal game, but I would say Nebraska covers that 6.5-point spread.
I think I'm going to hold my bets until I know who's officiating this game. I've been trying to figure out who the officials are going to be, and I don't know. So, Connor, if you have any insight there, let us know.
It's just
I don't
going
know
to be
yet,
bad.
but I can text you.
Yes, text us as Elijah will start his car at 5:57, and we will speed to the book since it's a road game. Cotter, Montana Husker fan, checks in on the stream and wants to see if Tominaga and Wiltshire can get going together for once. And, there's been instances where they both, and I go back to Purdue, I think they both had decent games against Purdue. But as far as the Batman and Robin thing, you've not really seen that. One's been off or not as prolific, and the other's been on. And in Wiltshire's case, he was Superman against Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's tough for both of those guys to get going at the same time because they play a very similar game. They're both shooters. They both like to run on the outside. Casey is a little bit more mobile than CJ is. Terrence Shannon Jr. even said it after the Illinois game. The kid never stops moving. That's why he's so hard to guard. But they both play very similar games, and I think that's why. But if both of them have the hot hand, it really doesn't matter who you give it to at the end of the day. I think what matters is if one of those two is going, you either need Bryce Williams to have a good night or you need Rink Mass to have a good night. We saw that against Wisconsin. 3 of them had a really good time, and C.J. Wiltshire, Bryce Williams, and Rink Mass. And then at Illinois, it was the Rink Mass and Casey Tominaga show. So if you can get one of those two and either pair Williams or Mass with them, I think that works out pretty well. It's just tough to tell because both of them play such a similar game.
Connor, have a great call. We'll check in with you when you get back. Be safe and enjoy the experience tonight. Should be pretty awesome.
Will do, guys. Thanks for having me.
There he is, Connor Clark at C_Clark_27. He'll have it for the college radio station KRNU tonight. We'll wind down hour 1. It's Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
10-minute warning. Sam Koch with us here on Hail Varsity. Ravens Super Bowl champ, Nebraska standout. His son part of 2024's class. Reminder to buckle up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries. Only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Husker Super Bowl week rolls forward today, tomorrow, and into Friday. Let's hear from Matt Rhule. What does he need to see from the quarterbacks and the young pups during winter conditioning drills?
100%. Yeah, I think, none of those guys in the locker room care about how highly ranked you were in recruiting, and they certainly don't care about how many touchdowns you threw in high school. They don't care about how well you played last year. They care about what you're doing right now. They're very much in the moment. Jamal Banks got here from Wake Forest. He's transfer, and we do our competitions. He's by far and away dominating our team in terms of his commitment to, winning points and winning his team. I can assure you, no one cares whether he played here last year or not. They know he produces. And we're trying to produce a competitive environment. So every off-season drill, everything is competitive. And so I know that the guys are always watching the quarterbacks. Like, who is going to, we lost 5 games by 3 points or overtime. So we're fighting for every single point. We're 3 points away from being a good team in our brains. So am I going to follow a quarterback that doesn't win all the drills, that's not out there throwing at 6 a.m., that's not there on the weekends? I'm not following that guy. So I think everyone's watching everything right now. And those players, you do the offseason so that you can get in better shape, but I want to see who's competitive and who shies away from the competition and who attacks it. And when things get really hard and the mat drills are, kicking your butt or spring ball is hard, that's when I want to find out who's the problem. Because, last year we lost, we lose games and the coaches would get up here we'd run double under with a corner against Maryland and it's a pick and we say, hey, maybe we should have called a better call. Those days are going to be over. Every team in the country throws touchdowns on those plays. And our team, we need guys to go get the ball. We need guys to throw the ball. And if you want to see what that looks like, go watch Patrick Mahomes and how many plays are on script for him. He's out there playing ball. And so the off seasons where you in college, it's where you show your teammates, hey, I'm a playmaker. I'm someone to be watched. I'm going to compete at everything, and I'm tough. Then you get to spring ball, and you start another phase. So I think the winter is unbelievably important. And I can tell from the demeanor of those three guys, based upon, I haven't been there to watch, but based upon, as I watch the points and I watch the way they're competing, they all know that.
I love that.
That was so good.
I mean, you think about it, it's like...
When it's going crappy, who's still a stand-up guy?
Well, it's like he's saying, I'm trying to establish a culture and trying to find guys that even if the defense knows what we're running, they're going to go out and execute. That's what he's saying with everyone in the country runs those. And that's, if you read in between the lines, he's saying, yeah, the defense probably knows there could be a play like that coming. It shouldn't matter. Think back to Nebraska in the 90s.
We'll make the catch.
I mean, the offensive line walking up the line of scrimmage and telling the defensive line, the ball's coming here, try and stop it. Mm-hmm. It's the exact same energy that Matt Rhule's saying right there. Hey, everyone in the country runs this. I don't care if the defense has the perfect play called up for it. Go out and execute.
We'll have Rhule's comment on Mazuka next hour. We'll sneak that in. There's a lot of questions and comments regarding Mazuka in the portal, in the portal get for Nebraska, but in our stream. And as always, subscribe to Hail Varsity's YouTube channel. Tell a buddy about that. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Subscribe there. You can find the show. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. The segments you want or the entire thing for you. Nick Saban news next hour. We'll dive in with Evan Bland on signing day 2.0 for 2024. Sam Koch kicks us off hour 2 next on Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. It is Husker Super Bowl week, and we welcome in Hall of Famer with Nebraska football and Super Bowl champ with the Baltimore Ravens. Part of their staff as special teams consultant, Sam Koch, back with us. And Sam, this time of year, we're winding down football season, and spring's just around the corner. We love talking some ball with you. How are you doing? How's everyone out there in Baltimore?
We're doing well. We're, it was a rough end of the season, but, there's nothing we can do now other than move on and look forward to the next season. So we're trying to get everything switched from last season to this season now and trying to look ahead and see what we can do. But family's doing good. And can't complain, so everything's really good, Chris.
Well, that is awesome. Sam Koch with us at Hail Varsity talking Super Bowl. Sam, you guys in Baltimore saw both of these teams. Let's talk Super Bowl first on Sunday. You went out, had probably the most impressive win of the NFL season against San Francisco. You saw KC and were right there. To the bitter end against the Chiefs at home in the AFC Championship. So what sticks out about both of these teams?
They're both really good teams. The 49ers have done well all season. We had their number when we played them during that week, and it just didn't work out the same for the Chiefs. But both great teams. It's going to be a fun game to watch. I wish we were there. Wish we were just getting there today, but wasn't in the cards this year. So it'll be a great game to watch for sure.
Who do you like in this game? I mean, I know you have a firsthand experience playing against the Chiefs. The 49ers have been the juggernaut all season long, and I'm not, I guess, asking you to make a prediction here, but whenever you look at it on paper, you've seen a lot of football. What matchups are there to watch, and who do you kind of like because of that?
Sorry about that. There, the matchup, there's a lot of great matchups. I mean, you're going, you got Brock Purdy with Mahomes, and it's going to be great to see how that all unfolds, especially with Purdy being young. But the defenses, you got great guys on both sides of the ball there. And, we pay attention a lot with the special teams, so seeing Tommy Townsend and Wisnowski and the kickers and how their special teams operate. They both got a great special teams unit. We played them both and thought we did really well against both of those teams. So it'll be exciting to see how they play in the Super Bowl. Kansas City Chiefs has a lot of experience being in there. So, and with 49ers not being there as much, but they've been going to the championships the last couple of years, it's going to be a fun game to watch. And you get to watch, all sides of the game because I think it's going to be a very explosive game.
Sam Koch is with us with the Baltimore Ravens, Hail Varsity Radio. Sam, I got to ask, fire or police, and you're not speeding, are you? We heard some sirens.
Yeah, sorry about it. No, there must have been a rescue call up the road, so we were just, and I don't know, it must have been pretty bad because they're everywhere, so we're not speeding.
No, I was just asking.
So I was hoping a little bit, not for your sake, but it would have been a cool radio moment to have the get of the year. We got Sam Koch on a police chase. He's being run down by law enforcement.
Sam's helping law enforcement.
I'm kidding.
Sam,
correct. No, I get you. That would be quite the entertainment for sure. But I don't see myself doing that.
Was there a rescue call needed for Justin Tucker with the way that the Chiefs were messing with him pregame warm-up? That seems to me like a no-no, Sam, with the kickers and specialists. You guys are locked in, dude, doing your craft with the conditions because it's going to come down to special teams.
Yeah, that was a rough situation. Tucker does that every game. He does that every single practice. Every single day he's out on that field, there is his helmet is sitting right there on the goal line, right in the middle of the field. He has the sticks there. And with the games, he does the same thing. He has the same routine. Problem is some teams come out early, some teams don't come out as early. Some teams practice, towards like the middle of their warm-up area, and other teams practice down there, and never ever really been an issue. And that must just be where Mahomes always warms up as well, and their offense, and it just so happened to collide. But I spoke with Tucker, and he said Mahomes asked him to move his helmet, so he did. And then Travis comes over and kicked it out of the way. So I don't know what else happened after that, but this is what I saw, and it sounded like it was no big deal at first until he kicked it out of the way.
Do you think a lot's been made out of a small story with this just because the cameras were rolling in that moment? Is this something that happens more than you'd think in the NFL with pregame? I don't want to say scuffles, but maybe some gamesmanship, or is this actually something that's a big deal and you don't run into very much?
No, I mean, I think there might have been just a little miscommunication, whether or not Mahomes knew he had asked Tucker prior or not. But, I mean, there's stuff that go on every game. But for the most part, everybody's very, cordial about their warm-up areas and doing the proper things, giving them the proper space that they need, but giving us the proper space we need. And, usually everybody's pretty good.
Sam, what's the last couple seasons been like for you as special teams consultant?
Actually, they've been great. I get to work with a great special teams coordinator in Chris Horton, kind of showing me how to join the coaching side, the other side, kind of get more in-depth look on the way, special teams is played. I've punted and kicked all my life, and other than playing special teams in high school, but just trying to see, rather than just go and play, and now you got to teach these guys how to do these techniques and fundamentals, and all the things that go into pre-practice, post-practice, pre-game, post-game, all those things that play into effect. I'm having like a first-hand, grasp on what's going on, and it's just, there's so much more than I ever thought. Just all the preparation that goes. I knew there was a lot of preparation, but then it goes above and beyond what I ever thought. So it's fun getting used to it. It's fun learning it and trying to understanding more of the game of special teams along with the other aspects of the game.
It's pretty awesome. Sam Koch is with us, Super Bowl champ with the Ravens, Hail Varsity Radio. So I saw that Camden had his official visit back on the 23rd of January. So many Nebraska fans are excited for your family, for Camden, to have him a part of Nebraska's class. And Sam, I know you're thrilled about it as well. How was that official visit? And spend a moment here on just kind of the trajectory in Nebraska.
That was, he said, him and my wife went out, Nicole, and they had a great time. Once again, we always know how Nebraska is, and it's a first-class university, and everything they do is, respectful and everything. And so they had a blast there. They got to sit down with all the coaches and be around them, go to basketball games, see how well, the basketball team's doing this year, and everything about it was just, first class. And it's to be expected when, that's our hometown, and that's the way people are out there in Nebraska. So they had a lot of fun. And, kind of going forward, they got a lot of, my gosh, this couldn't have been the worst time for this. I can't believe all these sirens.
No, you're fine, Sam.
You're completely good. I don't think it's your fault.
No, we know it's
definitely
not
my fault, but it's like, I'm going to have to look it up after this to see what went on, because there's a ton of them.
Well, be safe, brother. That's what we want.
Correct. But, the trajectory of Nebraska, I mean, it's great seeing all these former Huskers kids, it kind of dates you now how fast time goes, but seeing all these former Huskers and now their kids going there and playing, and not only that, wanting to go back there and be there rather than being at a big ACC school, Florida, Alabama, or whatever. They want to go back and be a part of that tradition because that's where it was, right? The tradition and the history of Nebraska is kind of what brought me there, other than being a hometown kid. And it's just great to see. So it's great to see how Rhule and Foley and all these coaches, and I think of C.J. Cavazos and everything that they're doing there. And it's great to see because they cherish the alumni. They want to keep them involved. They're doing all the right things to hopefully bring this University of Nebraska football back to where it's supposed to be.
We've talked a decent amount on this show, Sam, over the past couple weeks about special teams coordinator Ed Foley. He's made the rounds to the state of Nebraska, visited, feels like just about every single high school in the state. I know that's not possible in one offseason, but sure feels like he's going for it. Have you got a chance to speak with Ed Foley enough? So how'd that conversation go? What do you think of Ed?
Yeah, I met him when he was down in Carolina because we actually had joint practices down there, and then came back for the specialist camp that they had last June and got to speak with him then and hang out. He's a great guy, understands the special teams. He works well with the punters and kickers and kind of understands that part of the game. So it's really cool to see. And, we also got to do a little classroom together. So it was great to kind of see his perspective and everything that he's learned while being in the NFL and the college level. And it was great to kind of see how things are very similar. from his view. So that way, if we ever have questions, we have a good way of communicating because we're both on the same page. So I speak to Brian Buschini a lot about his punting, and then, we create dialogue with Ed as well on some of the things that he's doing. So we're both on the same page as far as how to approach specialists. And I think that's really great because he's got a great understanding of it. And, I know he's building these special teams units to the way that it should be and the way that so many great special teams players have come out of Nebraska.
Sam Koch with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Husker Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champ. Sam, we'll get you out on this and appreciate you giving us a few minutes during Super Bowl week. What was that championship like for you 10 years ago? You guys outlast San Fran, and you get a ring. You get a second ring for Ray. I know you were close with Ed Reed and of course, Ray Lewis when you got to Baltimore. So that was special. I remember you gave us that Monday, the following Monday of your championship. You were on with us, and we still smile about that, man. You're the best. But think back and just, these guys are on a stage for a ring. What has that moment meant for you as a football player?
I think it's one of those things. We had a couple players and a couple former players come by this previous week prior to the AFC Championship game, and some of the things, the words that they put out there is more about like the memories, and it's like the ring is what it is, the trophy is what it is, but when you were part and engraved kind of in stone, part of a memory that you get to be with these guys, those are the things that you're going to remember forever. And, my ring sits down in the safe, so you hardly ever see it, but every time you go into the facility, you see that Lombardi, you see that the banners that we have in there and everything that goes along with that, and the memories that you'll have with those group of guys are the things that you're going to remember forever. And seeing photos around the organization of Ed Reed giving his, 2 tickets to paradise speech. All these things that went on in that parade. It's just so cool to kind of look back and reminisce on those times because they went by way too fast. And so that's our next goal, is just hopefully getting back there, being a part of that so we can make those memories again and being etched in stone on that Lombardi for years to come.
Man, that's great and well put. Sam Koch with us here, Husker legend and part of the Ravens. Sam, we're looking forward to seeing Camden. We're looking forward to talking again, and thanks for giving us some time this week.
Absolutely. I appreciate you reaching out, Chris, and I'm always happy to be on here with you. I always thank you guys.
Sam, you take care, bud.
Appreciate it. You do the same.
And don't let those police catch you.
Yeah. Hopefully they're done now that we're off the phone.
Sam Koch, and we've had some just marvelous comments in the stream asking if Sam is driving a white Bronco from the artist formerly known as KG Kids for Life. Sam did rejuvenate I think an 84 Bronco. Remember that conversation we had with him a year or two ago?
He did do that, didn't he?
Yeah, he was fixing up a Bronco. It wasn't Bronco as Blanco. It wasn't that Bronco.
I'm going to check the Baltimore police scanner, actually.
We have talked to the guy who owns OJ's former agent that owns the Bronco. He was doing the interview in the Bronco a few years back.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Sam Koch with us, Raven standout, Husker Hall of Famer, Super Bowl week. More Huskers in the Super Bowl tomorrow. Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald. At Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. Evan was at the Rhule presser a little bit earlier today.
As far as we know, not in a white Ford Bronco?
No, Evan is not being, I don't want to say hit by police in the sense of that sound vibration. I mean, Sammy was in a tough area, or just Baltimore. And, there was lots of sirens. So Sam navigated well. Evan, with this merger, before we get into recruiting and signing day, you've got this stream partnership here working with the Big Ten and the SEC. And all of our problems will be solved in the world of college football and basketball, allegedly. Are they going to kick things off to promote this new channel with a Saban v. Urban steel cage match? Would you buy it?
Yes, I think I would. I mean, those guys with their will to win and their competitiveness, I would absolutely take that up. You know, with the Big Ten SEC thing, I think just don't call it an alliance. We've already gone down that road. We know what that's like and how trustworthy maybe something like that can be. But like, what I think is interesting is you can see whatever you want to see. Like, if you want to see this as like the beginning of the end, you can see that. If you want to see this as like the team or the leagues with the most power at the table sort of taking control and saving the smoldering remains of the NCAA, you can see that as well. So I don't know that even the administrators and leaders from both of those leagues know what they're looking for. They just know that it can't go on as it is, and like it's such a fascinating situation because I think you could go a lot of different directions.
Yeah, whenever you talk about don't use the word alliance, Evan, I was just thinking about this. The Pac-12 ACC Big 12 alliance lasted a shorter amount of time than Germany and the Soviet Union in 1939, which is kind of crazy.
That was
to
quick.
Think about.
Wow.
Yeah, that alliance lasted 2 years, which the Pac-12, ACC, and Big 12 did not reach that long, which is crazy when you think about who was involved in that alliance back in 1939.
I hate you, Hitler. Oh, I hate you, Stalin. I mean...
and it still lasted longer.
Yeah, that's...
The difference is those are all still countries, and the Pac-12 is kind of what it is at this point. You know, who's left to sort of wring their hands over it with them going to other leagues? But yeah, I as a history guy, I appreciate the parallels there for sure.
And just so we make the public service announcement, the Big Ten nor the SEC represents Hitler or Stalin. Let's move.
I'll stay away from the joke I was going to make.
Let's move forward and get Evan's take on Coach Rhule. And Evan, there's lots of things today with the signing day. Some players highlighted, the walk-on class. But are you surprised? You were in contact with all these recruits, with Keona Wilhite, Nebraska being able to nab him late in the process. Do you think he's an impact guy in the same realm as we saw last year with Nebraska's defensive standouts? That's Princewell, and that's Lenhart, and that's Van Poppel. Can he have that same type of first year for this pass rush for Nebraska?
I think it's possible, and I think Nebraska would not have gone to the lengths that it did if it didn't think that he was someone who could come in and make a difference. I mean, his situation was so unique, too, as a guy who had signed with Washington and got out of that when Kalen DeBoer went to Alabama, and then he was looking UCLA, and then Chip Kelly's dalliance with the NFL got him to reconsider. So, there were a lot of things that had to happen for him to be available to Nebraska. But, yeah, I mean, if you're the coaching staff, you can point to what Cam Lenhart, Princewell did last year, and this is a guy who himself is 6'5", 240 pounds, history of production as a high school prospect out of Tucson in Arizona. I think that's someone that you look at. Rhule had a good point today when he said that there are just certain guys that he's always going to look at taking. Anyone who makes a difference in terms of sort of wrecking havoc on the game defensively, and then any big man as an offensive lineman or defensive lineman. I think Wilhite certainly fits the former category as someone who has that explosiveness, who has the frame, who by all accounts has the work ethic and personality to fit in. And so you talk about guys at a lot of positions that maybe need a year of nutrition or strength training to build their bodies up. I mean, he kind of looks the part a little bit already. And when you think about guys, even James Williams for Nebraska last year, who came in and has that ability off the edge, that's what Wilhite does well. That's why he was pursued by a lot of power conference teams, and Nebraska is excited to have him. So whether that's this year or down the road, he has all the skill sets that this staff's looking for to make a difference in a game.
Evan Bland with us here from the Omaha World Herald, Hail Varsity Radio. And Evan, quickly before we get back to some Husker thoughts here, what's your take on Chip Kelly and all the smoke with him wanting to leave UCLA? Do you think he sees the writing on the wall in terms of, well, UCLA's head off to the Big Ten and maybe this isn't a great fit in terms of football? What do you make of that Chip Kelly smoke to, well, Iowa and then the Raiders? It's kind of been all over.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It's a different challenge, man. I mean, trying to compete in the Pac-12, I think in the last year it's certainly gotten more difficult with the rise of Washington and what Oregon's been doing. But, I mean, you look at the challenge moving into the Big Ten when you're talking about an 18-team league going coast to coast. UCLA, I think more than Washington and Oregon and maybe even USC would have to – I think that adjustment would be harder for what UCLA wants to do just in terms of physicality and the weather and things of that nature. You look at the recruiting class, I think UCLA ended up 17th in the league, next to last with talent acquisition. And then, I have no inside information on this, but oftentimes when we see college coaches move on to the NFL, especially in the last year or so, it's because, they're apprehensive about NIL and about recruiting year-round and all this. I wonder if maybe that is the case for a guy like Chip Kelly, who has been in the NFL before, who knows kind of what that structure is like, and it's harder to sort of keep up with the moving targets of changing rules and just the changing landscape of the sport at UCLA. So if he's in that position, or if that's his view, and you have a chance to go back to the NFL as an offensive coordinator and have a chance to just kind of have more boundaries and structure to what you're doing, plus just the fact that, you're maybe one bad season away from UCLA wanting to make a coaching change anyway, I think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of different ways. And, again, whether he ends up going or not kind of remains to be seen. But I think it does speak to just the challenge of college sports and what the Big Ten is going to become as well.
Bruins never should have got rid of Jim Mora Jr. He's cranking out 9 or 10 wins and 2 or 3 first-round picks, it felt like, every year. That's just me. Evan, let's talk a minute here about Kamir Prescott. A thought on his addition. I know Wisconsin was going to be his landing spot, but is he kind of that hybrid defensive back linebacker body type?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I mean, I had the connections from Philadelphia with Matt Rhule and his staff, so they were able to vet him well just from a character and an ability standpoint. And, his high school career has been interesting. Like, he was a running back for most of his career, made the switch to defense in high school. Is really versatile as a defensive back. He's played safety and corner. He can do man, off man, all the different kind of coverages that you're looking for. And so, to get a late ad like that as a walk-on, technically, who had been committed to Wisconsin, I think is notable. To me, as much as there is upside from the player, and I think there is upside, I'm fascinated by what he represents in terms of how teams now are building their rosters moving forward. Because, again, he's a walk-on technically, but there's an NIL factor that goes into that, and I think it's just another example of Nebraska being creative in how it's putting competition and talent into a room, and it I think can kind of work with the numbers a little bit there, and I think it speaks to Nebraska's pitch that Prescott would come halfway across the country without a scholarship. But yeah, I think he's someone who you probably put behind the scenes for a year or two in terms of development. You look at what Nebraska's secondary would turn over in 2025, I think a couple years down the road, and he's somebody that, if he continues on the path he's on, would be in the mix for that. So I think it's sort of an under-the-radar addition a little bit, again, because maybe of the walk-on status or because of the fact that it came on signing day, but somebody, again, that Nebraska feels good about, and I think it'll be interesting to see how he develops in the next couple of years.
Evan, your first two classes, whenever you get to a school, are often labeled as your foundational classes, the one that set the table for the rest of a tenure. And whenever you look at Matt Rhule's first two recruiting classes combined now, how do you rank the foundational classes that he's put together?
Highly. The last one, was kind of what you do in a transition where they were able to retain a few of the commits that were there, and then they had the mad scramble. I think the final number last year was 39 scholarship ads. I think it was 36 now this year when it's all said and done. Although, with this class, they got the majority of their commits in the summer, certainly from the month of June. They leaned heavily on their camp evaluations. But when I think of the two classes in general to this point, I think big picture, what I think of is they really addressed the lines of scrimmage. I thought the 2023 class was the theme on the defensive line, again, with guys like Lenhart and Newman Mielen, but we're going to see Sua Lafotu and Riley Van Poppel, I think, emerge as factors as soon as this coming season. And I think the class that they just signed, it was more on the offensive line side of things with Grant Bricks and Preston Tamua and Landon Davidson and Gibson Pyle. I think even a guy like Xander Ruggioli, who's a walk-on, kind of fits the Kamir Prescott category of a guy who could have been a scholarship player at a lot of schools. So that, to me, with this class was what they did. And again, you look at Nebraska's offensive line, it's going to be an older group in 24, but when that thing turns over to 25, it's going to be a line change in more than one sense. And so I think that's when we're maybe going to appreciate really what this class was in terms of what they added up front.
Evan, about 30 seconds. Prediction tonight, Nebraska Northwestern. The line is -6.5 Cats.
Well, I think you probably want to stick with the trends if you're betting. Obviously it's a big chance for Nebraska to get that road win and sort of change the narrative on just not being able to win outside of PBA and be world beaters in it. For what it's worth, Northwestern kind of fits the same description as Nebraska. They've been really good at home and have struggled on the road. So you have a couple different trends saying, suggesting pretty positively or pretty strongly how this thing's going to go. But if you're Nebraska, it's that last opportunity before maybe the schedule eases up a bit as they're trying to stack some wins. So I think you're probably not the favorite, certainly, if you're Nebraska, but it's an opportunity to maybe change that discussion point.
Love it, Evan. Thanks for the time today, bud.
Thanks, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, and time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Nebraska Orthopedic Center, Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us. And Dr. Brandon, how about the sequel to last week's Jock Doc with Joel Embiid? One of the front runners for the MVP is going to be out, a knee procedure. It sounds like it's going to be a meniscus trim.
Yeah, it sounds like that's kind of the route they're going. We kind of speculated about that last week. Here we are getting a little sequel on Embiid. They've mentioned in there about, maybe back pretty quickly, maybe anywhere from a 3 to 6 week kind of return for him, which, definitely lends itself to more of kind of a cleanup type procedure. But essentially what this is, as we think about the anatomy of the knee, we've talked about, a lot of meniscus pathology here on the show. Knee meniscus, essentially it's a C-shaped structure that's on both sides of the knee. It's what we call it's a shock absorber, gives you some stability as well. And what happens here is typically we'll see tearing in that meniscus kind of towards the back, obviously a fairly common injury in our young athletes that we will see. And so the big issue with these is what happens is you tear the meniscus as you get to a point where there starts to become instability of the meniscus, so a piece of that may break free or kind of the whole structure itself may flip over on itself. And that obviously creates pain. From there you can have catching, locking, maybe feel like your knee kind of gives out. Those are some of those kind of classic meniscus signs. Swelling is usually a part of it. Of course, pain and limitations with sports. That's kind of classic for it. And so that's the route or the pathway that he's kind of on. And then obviously the big debate always with meniscus injuries is, how do you treat them? Most of the time these are going to need surgery, especially in young, healthy, active patients, athletes in particular. And then you have to make that decision, once they're in surgery, is it something you can sew back together to try to get it to heal versus is it something you just kind of clean up and trim? obviously the goal always is to save as much meniscus as you can, and so we want to try to sew these back together if we can and give that meniscus an opportunity to heal.
Dr. Brandon, how big is the next few weeks for Embiid when it comes to recovery and rehab for a shot to get back towards the end of the regular season?
He's really going to have a significant recovery kind of in two areas. One's going to be getting his quad muscle back, so you have that kind of strength, stability, that stabilizer of the knee. That's kind of the goal number one. And then goal number two is just trying to manage those symptoms. So one, how quickly does that pain go away? How quickly do those pre-operative symptoms resolve? And that other thing is basically trying to keep the swelling down. Sometimes, especially if you've had previous surgery here, you're a little slower to recover. Quad takes a little longer to come back. And also swelling can be more of a factor depending on the amount of times you've had surgery. So those would be kind of those big factors, at least initially with these. The good news is after this type of procedure, you can get really aggressive with treatment with these. And so he'll be, checked in and plugged into therapy right away, being pretty aggressive about getting that strength back.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday talking Joel Embiid, the meniscus injury. Dr. Brandon, the prognosis put at 3 to 6 weeks, with 3 being aggressive, 6 being conservative. And I look at the NBA schedule, we're 10 weeks away from the NBA postseason getting going, and it seems likely, with or without Embiid, that the Sixers are going to make the postseason. Is there any added benefit to shutting him down for the rest of the regular season?
Yeah, that's a great point. I would definitely lean, since they definitely look like they most likely are going to have a solidified playoff spot. So I would definitely lean a little long for him just to see what kind of distance you can get out of him in the playoffs. And so, the closer you push him, maybe even to 6 or 8 weeks, probably the better. And so that would be reasonable, especially again their playoff spots kind of sealed at this point. But yeah, that's a big question mark. Obviously, you want to get him some reps, going through this. But again, the more rest you can get him postoperatively from game time, I think the better he does, and the better player is going to be for you in playoffs.
Dr. Brandon, he has had injuries to both of his knees in his career, and what's that do to, to your lower extremities? What's he dealing with? What's his basketball age, even though he's only 29 right now? I'm just wondering here, mileage-wise, knee injuries to both. What's his long-term outlook? How long do you think he can play at a high level?
Yeah, that's a really good point when you start thinking about the amount of surgery and the injuries he's had. As we look at kind of that spectrum of, what's the trajectory here in terms of how many years does he have left, what kind of level can he play at? The big thing we really start to worry about is more the cartilage part. So again, going back to anatomy, cartilage is that smooth surface on the ends of the bones. And that's kind of your gliding surface. And so as you start to chip away at that, wear away at that, that just makes life more painful while you're playing, sets you up a little bit more in terms of having other injuries, and then also that kind of recovery period just tends to get longer and longer because you're more sore after games, more pain, less of a recovery. And so that's really kind of the part that plays into that. And no doubt he most likely is going to have some wear and tear on his cartilage. It's hard to say how much does he have, how much is left. Does he have areas where maybe he has missing cartilage perhaps with all the trauma he's had in the games he's played? So that's kind of the issue you worry about there. Number two, the more kind of meniscus you lose, the more that kind of surface contact pressure increases inside the knee. And now those areas of maybe some damaged cartilage are seeing even more abuse because you're having kind of higher pressure in some small areas because you've lost some meniscus. So he no doubt probably has issues with both of those, in particular the meniscus we know of. And so that definitely does kind of diminish that. Hard to put a number on it. It all depends on how well they can kind of manage the discomfort, figure out maybe kind of a game plan for kind of his rest, how he does practice, and then obviously managing, any of those other kind of tweaks here and there where you trip a little bit more meniscus or have more of those kind of twisting injuries happen where it just kind of sets you back. I still think, he's got a couple more good years for sure, but it's hard to say. Is he a 10-year guy? That'd be probably a stretch.
Dr. Brandon, it's interesting to hear him talk about potential season management, maybe minutes restrictions, treating him a little differently in practice. But the thing is you can't wrap a guy in bubble wrap throughout an entire NBA season. So I want to get your thoughts. What can be done in the offseason training-wise for Joel Embiid with these knees? Is there anything that can be done by his training staff or by Joel himself in order to maybe extend his longevity a little bit in the offseason?
Yeah, honestly, as you look at that, Elijah, this is something that we've tried to emphasize more, especially in our young athlete population, is that this whole concept of rest. So you look at a lot of these high-level athletes, and what it takes to play at that level, even to get to that level, the amount of work and dedication in the hours. But as you look at somebody like him, and he's there, he needs a lot of rest. This is a guy that you're going to really just shut down. And you got to make sure during those periods of rest they really are resting. Not that you're just not doing basketball. If you're out doing a bunch of heavy weightlifting or sports conditioning, then that's not really rest. And so for him, being able to really find a good kind of rest phase and how you do that is going to be absolutely critical for him. I think our NBA players and professional players of old did such a much better job of that. You look at like some of the things that Bird and Jordan talked about kind of during their off-season time. There was definitely a period of rest in there that's so different than what we're doing now. So I think that is important. There's some medications, other types of treatments you could do. Not a ton on that kind of end. Obviously, we've talked about the stem cells, the PRP type stuff. Yes, sure, maybe you can utilize that some for some ailing injuries. That might help some. Other things for him is we always talk about biomechanics on here. Is there something maybe he does that's biomechanics a little bit off? Is the kneecap not tracking quite right? Does he maybe have a little bit of a muscular imbalance? Kind of in the quad musculature, hamstrings that maybe you can correct in the off season. Those are some things that you definitely could do that would be really beneficial for him long term.
Dr. Brandon, thanks for the insight on Joel Embiid. We'll see if he gets back to end the regular season. Always appreciate a few minutes.
Okay, fellas, you guys take care.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, get the podcast, subscribe to us, Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and subscribe to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Elijah Herbel's Twitter at Herbal Essence, at Schmidt_radio for me. And signing day 2.0 in the books. Big thanks to Evan Bland and Sam Koch talking Super Bowl and some Big Red with us. And Babbers, Mike Babcock got us going in hour one. Connor Clark is in Evanston, and he'll be on the call for KRNU tonight. Connor, thoughts on Nebraska and Northwestern. Matt Rhule shared his take on Micah Mazuka. Where's he fit into the offensive line? And it was, pretty truth-telling from Rhule thus far.
Micah's a talented player. Micah's going to have to do all the things I just talked about. Micah's going to have to understand, like the University of Nebraska, like we work, we grind, we pay the price. It's not about what we did. It's about what we're trying to do. So I love Micah. I've known him since he was in high school. But, Micah's got a way to go in terms of understanding the standards that are here.
That was pretty reality radio there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the times I was talking with some of the other cuts earlier in the show, reading in between the lines. No reading in between the lines necessarily there.
Got ways to go. There you have it. So Nebraska, a ways to go with their road record, but overall a tremendous season. Nebraska basketball fans are fired up. They are right there in the thick of it. Chance to be fourth or better and work on that double bye. But first things first, yes, a road win. And can you get through this last tough stretch? Your last quad one opportunity is in front of you tonight. -6.5. Northwestern is favored. Northwestern's right there with you. You're pretty much mirror with them, a few spots higher depending on what service you subscribe to. Both teams are in the field of 68 right now. Both seem to be at that 9 line. Who fades to a 10 or worse? Who fades to a last 4 in or play in Dayton? All that time will tell. Nebraska has winnable games, air quote, moving forward at PBA and on the road. What happens tonight, Elijah? Is it Nebraska breaking on through with the Juan addition? Is it Nebraska that plays hard and just falls at the end, a la like they did against Illinois? I think if you're a Nebraska fan, you need to see a similar type game / effort / locked in performance. Give me back-to-back Illinois-type performances where you play well enough to win, and then I think you can feel better moving forward. Moving forward, you feel better about some of those road opportunities, and you handle the home front. I think Nebraska falls. I think they play well. I think it gets free throwy late. Northwestern 71, Nebraska 60.
Both these teams have played in overtime games in their two most recent games. I think Nebraska's got more to feel good about coming out of those overtime games than Northwestern does. Northwestern lost at Purdue and at Minnesota, again, both in overtime. For that reason, I'm taking Nebraska money line, actually. I've been down on this team. Something's got to change, right?
You've been selective.
3-point win for the Huskers, 73-70.
All right, and you will find some rancid shot for me to take on Friday. Or I will pick my poison back for you. Talk tomorrow at 4. Thanks.